Hello! Hi! We're going to do a little Q&A with Glanville today, which is here at Octavo as our right to residence. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. If you ladies have a couple of questions, you can ask them as well. So first of all, you were born to Irish parents in West Africa and you've come to live in West Wales.
That's
How?
Right.
How? Explain, please.
Well, I was born in Sierra Leone and my father was working in university there, and then we went to live in Ireland where my parents were both from Dublin, and when I was 5 we moved to Bristol, so I grew up
close to the Welsh border then?
Quite close to the Welsh border. You could see the Severn Bridge, but we didn't often go to Wales, but we went to Ireland every year to see relatives, so we drove through Wales, and I went to college in London, and then my husband and I set up a pottery business.
Really?
And I would quite like to have gone to Ireland and
continue there.
But Wales was like a compromise.
It's like the furthest towards Ireland without being in Ireland.
That's how I felt.
I like it.
Yeah.
So have you been writing since you were young as well?
Yes. Well, I started sort of wanting to write and having a sort of urge to write down stories when I was very little. I can remember being 8 and trying to write a story about a cat and struggling. Well, I think I was dyslexic. I think I am dyslexic. My 2 sons are very dyslexic. And so at school I was always being criticised for my spelling and everything going about cutting red lines and writing these words out 10 times.
It's not that encouraging.
No, it wasn't very encouraging. But when I was in my final year of primary school, I had a fantastic teacher called Miss Pello who really loved my stories and used to read them out to the class and say to matter about the spelling.
Those are the important teachers.
Yeah. She said, oh, you should be a writer. And then I went to a convent school for a year after that, and there was a very good English teacher there, Sister Sebastian, and she also was very encouraging and really liked it. And then I went to the local comprehensive where the teacher, where I was back to all the red lines and I can't spell, and nobody ever commented on my writing. Yeah.
So when did you decide to really pursue writing and that you wanted to publish?
At college, I used to try and I say, I just want to write a book, and I'd sort of sit down. I was hopeless at typing. It was before laptops and computers and things, and I used to sit there with a notebook and a pen and think, right, I'm going to write a story now, I'm going to write a novel, and that's what I'm going to do.
This side.
Yes. About half an hour later, I was I just go to the pub with my friends. And I was always telling boyfriends and people, I said, I really want to write, and they'd laugh at me. And so, yeah, and I think, but it was just always there. And when I had my first son, I would be feeding him, and I would think I should be doing something with my right hand, really. This time it's taken to feed him. And I did start doing some writing then a bit more. And I had a pottery business making personalised pottery, and one of my customers was a women's fiction writer, and I'd mentioned her on the phone once when she phoned up to order something. I said, oh, I've always wanted to write. And Charlotte Bingham, she's called, she writes romantic women's fiction. And she said, oh, do you want me to have a look at something you've written? So I sent her something one day.
Good contacts from weird corners.
And then she phoned me up and she said, it's fantastic, it's really, really good, you should do this, you should keep going. And that really inspired me to do that. And then also, I so much wanted to do it, such a sort of urge. And a friend
so like your push that you need really say to somebody like, yes, it's good, go do it.
And a really close friend of mine had cancer, and she only had a few months to live. She was younger than me. This is when I just turned 40. But it was just so awful. It was such an awful time. She had 3 young children the same age as mine, and she said to me, I was scared she was about the future and all the regrets she had for the things she hadn't done. And she thought she would have the time to do all sorts of things in her life, and then suddenly she didn't have any time at all. And she said, is there anything you've ever wanted to do because you should do it now? And I said, oh, I just wanted to write a book. And she said, well, you should just do it, just do it. And so, and that really I just started writing then, and I didn't stop. And I kept thinking about her, saying, and in that time she died, and that I wrote A Perfect Home then, and I dedicated it to her in the end, because I think without her sort of encouragement, I don't think I would have sort of got to the end. I just kept thinking about
finished it.
Yeah. And I just kept going, I kept going. It took 3 years, really. Then I phoned up Charlotte Bingham, the author, and said she'd like to write. And I said, I've got this whole manuscript here, but I don't know what to do with it.
What's next?
And she suggested sending it to an editing agency that she used called Heartstones. And she said, if they like it, they'll help you get it published. And so that's what I did, and that was fantastic advice, because they were just great. They loved it, and they found an agent. And then the agent found a publisher in America first, with Penguin in America, which was all very exciting. It was published there. And they didn't want me to be called Kate Glanville, because there's another author whose name was similar that they were publishing, so it was under the name Kitty Glanville. And so that was all a bit strange, because it was happening in another
We'll just rename it now, yes. Thank you very much.
Name, and it didn't really feel like my sort of...
Because it is your book, but it does have a different name on it then.
Yeah, and they changed all the words, like
yes.
to cookies and pavement to sidewalk, and they sent me all the corrections that I had to, and they sent all the changes they'd made and the little comments beside it. I had to say I was happy with them all. And then there were things like Marmite that they'd underlined, and I said, what is this?
What is Marmite? Well, you're either for or against.
And then Accent Press published it in this country, and I felt like I could go back to using my own name.
Marmite for the win, yes.
I could come back in. So it's set in an English town, it's very English, it just
Funny,
seemed
isn't it?
right to make all these changes.
All 3 of your books have to do with secrets, either family secrets or personal secrets. Are you a very secretive person? Seriously, are you a secretive person?
I never thought of myself as a secretive person, but my mum said to me the other day, she said, well, you are very secretive. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, there's always something you're not quite telling them.
So is that why you always think everybody else has secrets?
I must do. I wouldn't have said I was a secretive person, but I like the idea of things being hidden and things being discovered. I just find that quite interesting. Most people who carry on through life and things seem to be one way that might actually be another.
So your latest book is Stargazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it came to be from idea to a book?
But I think I had a seed of the idea. I know it was one of the books I started writing before I started writing A Perfect Home. It was one of the ones, I think that's one of the ones I started when I was feeding my youngest son, who's now 16, so that was quite a long time ago. And it was sort of based on the idea of a couple separating in later life and how that would affect their children, their adult children and grandchildren, and I think it's sort of, my parents divorced when I was 20. My dad went off with somebody else, and I was just outraged. I was at college at the time, and I was absolutely outraged and determined that it couldn't possibly last between my dad and this other woman, and they would get back together, and I was going to do my very best to make sure they got back together, which I completely failed at doing, though they did get back together 25 years later and now remarried, so...
That's the Gallagher story, though.
But that wasn't anything to do with me or me. But that sort of feeling almost of being an adult, so understanding how it would feel to be left and feel to be hurt, and feeling so much for my mum, feeling her pain, and thinking, sort of seeing it through an adult sense, like children.
It's a different experience from when children's parents divorce.
Yeah, so that's a seed. And then sort of thinking about the daughter trying to get her parents back together and what her situation might be and what she might be trying to find out about the father's new girlfriend and what secrets there might be to uncover, and maybe she thinks her parents have a perfect marriage.
Maybe it's also about the disillusionment then about relationships for her.
Yes.
Because I guess depending on her age, it's one of those things I feel that we become more realistic about relationships, whether it's between lovers, whether it's between parents and children.
Yes, yeah, I think that's true. I think you can have a very idealistic view of relationships, especially if you think your parents have a perfect relationship. I think you can sort of think, well, I must have a relationship like that, and try and emulate that, and it's not necessarily the way their relationship is. It's the same with friends. If you look at their relationships, I think, oh, they just have such a lovely relationship, and they're so lucky, and I wish that was like that for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that really happens.
So I've got a couple of quick fire questions as well for you. So this is just like a quick thing. What's your favourite word? They're not easy. I didn't promise they were easy. I said they were quick. Or a favourite word. I think it's hard to choose the absolute favourite. It's like choose between your children, but a favourite word. Something that you like to say or to write. There we are. What's your least favourite word?
Cake is probably my favourite word. I think you're always saying, there's so many cakes in your book.
I like it.
It's got every page.
What's your least favourite word?
Oh, long ones are difficult to spell. Business. I can never spell business. I run my own business for 25 years. So.
Too many S's.
Yes, I could never guess that. Minute is my least favourite word, I think, because I can't spell that. I was fighting with people. A minuet later. A minute later.
What characteristic in a character do you like?
Feistiness, I think. Just somebody who's not prepared to lie down and give up.
And your least favourite?
Manipulativeness. Somebody who's trying to...
Is it harder to write as well, do you think?
It is a little bit harder to write. Because you've got to sort of think how I don't think I'm very manipulative, so you have to put yourself in a position of how somebody might try and influence somebody else or control somebody else, which is quite hard. I think in Stargazing there's a very manipulative man who was very abusive, really. I did an awful lot of research into controlling relationships and those sort of people who gain power through control or the need to control somebody. And it's quite scary looking into it and sort of put you off beings in your relationships. Stay away.
What book would you like every single person in the world to have read? If you could recommend one book.
Stargazing.
Not your own. I know, that was badly worded, wasn't it? Let's just all read it. But apart from your own books, of course, because, you know.
I think of books that influenced me, but I remember reading The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera when I was at college and just thinking that was absolutely fantastic. I'm telling everybody they had to read it. Jane Eyre is always a very good book because I do like reading. I will go back to it.
So the first book in English I ever read.
It is an amazing book. It's got everything in it. It's got a great plot, it's got amazing characters.
It's a good classic.
Yeah.
And finally, what genre other than the one you're currently writing in would you like to attempt? And then have that attempt be really, really good?
Well, I think every book I write edges a little bit more towards a thriller in style, with it gets a little bit more.
So an all-out crime thriller then?
Yeah, something murder mystery. I don't think I'd have the courage to write that, but I would quite like to attempt something a little bit more thriller-esque.
Fabulous.
A domestic thriller, so how I think of my stories, really. So if that is the genre. But,
well, we'll just coin it now.
Yeah.
There we are. Do you ladies have any questions for Kate at all?
When you start writing a book, you have an idea and a plan, But does that change as the story develops?
Oh yes, it constantly changes. I don't understand how anybody could sit down and say, right, this is what I'm going to write.
So it takes over?
Yes, it has its own life, definitely. I know my agent was always saying, send me the synopsis for the next book, and and then I'd write down what it was going to be, and then she'd see the first draft and say, oh, it's changed. Of course it's changed. How can I sit there and say, well, this is how the story's going to work? I mean, I think when I wrote Stargazing, the character Oliver, who's the very sort of patrolling man, was quite a small character, and then he just came more and more into it until he was the final chapters. He's completely taken it over, and sort of.
Do you surprise yourself sometimes with the ending?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was quite horrified by the ending in Stargazing, or the sort of climax in Stargazing. I was sort of writing it, sort of like this, like, oh my goodness. This is awful.
Just the darkest corners of your brain,
Yes,
basically.
where's this coming from?
Share it with us all, it'd be lovely.
But it does go, quite often I'm writing late at night.
Yes.
When I'm very tired. And so sometimes I think I'm almost in a dreamlike state. Sometimes I'm literally nodding off. And sort of that in itself is a slight sort of hallucinogenic quality. And that sort of takes over. Then I'm eating in the morning and think, because I don't remember writing that.
Probably because when you're in that state, other things have gone out of your mind. You're just you're just tired.
Yeah.
You're not worrying about this or that.
That's right.
Anymore. You're just tired.
Yeah.
And then your mind opens up.
Yes,
to
and you're
more
sort of
ideas.
too tired to go to bed, really. I always think that is the time, even when I've stopped writing, I'll often just sit there for ages and things will just go through my mind about the story and the plot. And it is, yes, it probably is the most creative time.
So how long have you been writing? How many years have you been, or have you been published, you would say?
Oh, how do I go with it? But the first